I'm going to start this video with a few disclaimers about my approach to the monarchy. This whole situation, as well as a quick discussion about how relevant my opinion can possibly be in a discussion about race as a white person, which must be used to criticise the logic of people like Piers and other white news readers who can't put their opinion into what is considered racist and what's not considered racist. Despite the fact that I am a queer woman who obviously has faced some form of difficulty before because of those things, they are nothing and they are not relevant to this discussion of racism and race. Despite the fact that I have faced general life issues as well as oppression, those things cannot be used as a way to attempt to validate myself as someone to talk about race and talk about racism, as I am white. So a quick disclaimer, not only in terms of this video, this situation, but generally speaking, if a person of colour tells you their boundaries and tells you something that you've said or done has offended them or upset them, and you're a white person, shut the fuck up and listen to them, because you have not faced any form of discrimination like the discrimination that people of colour do face on daily life basis. Especially if you're in a dominating white Western society, you do not have the right to say that something that somebody who is a person of colour is offended by isn't offensive, because it's not offensive to you. Beyond that, if you are someone who is a person of colour or somebody who is more educated than me on the concepts of white fragility, then please call me out if you think that something I've said does not fit with your beliefs and does not represent a mindset that I would ever have experienced. It's not something I can experience, and therefore if something has offended you that I've said, please call me out, please tell me. We're here to learn, as if you are a white person you should be. I'm going to split this video talking about Meghan and Harry into a few different categories to try and get the flow going. This video is written and coming straight off the back of me watching Oprah's interview with Prince Harry and Meghan, and so it's very new to racism/bullying and media attention, the insinuations of stepping away from the monarchy, as they pointed out in the interview, why this isn't a huge deal and why this is a necessary liberating process for Meghan and Harry. Side mentions in the discussion of this within the media, with particular attention to Piers and the implications of there being a complete lack of faith in those who express that they are struggling publicly. Finally, the abolition of the monarchy and why I'm all for it. So as I said, the first category I'm going to talk about is racism/bullying and media attention. To watch not only this interview but the public lynching of Meghan Markle over the last 4 years has made it hard to not conclude the complete racism and complete overt racism evident still in traditional media outlets within the UK. Not only that, but the effect that this has had not only on Meghan's life but her children's lives as people of colour, her current child Archie and the child to be, the daughter that she is currently carrying, but also every person of colour watching this, as I've said, lynching, this situation unfold, and the way that she's been discussed in comparatively to Kate. Before Meghan joined the royal family, I knew very little about Meghan Markle. I don't even think I'd ever really heard of her, but I was very quickly introduced to this American actress who was coming into the royal family to destroy it, and that narrative is obviously bullshit, but it was one that was the first introduction I had to Meghan Markle, and it had to be that I kind of looked at the situation and educated myself in the situation to be like, this isn't a fair analysis of this woman. As Meghan pointed out throughout the Oprah interview, she got on very well with the individual members of the royal family as a family dynamic, especially the Queen. They clearly had a relationship that was as clear and solid as the way Harry discussed his grandmother. So for her to suddenly face allegations of her blindsiding the Queen and bullying the Duchess of Cambridge Kate, being a money-hungry, power-hungry woman who was coming over from America and infiltrating the British royal family as this like evil and manipulative person, seemingly based on absolutely no evidence, was baffling. I think it was very clear from the start that this public lynching was founded on racism. A racism that many believed in our society was extinct, which is crap. A lot of people, until the very evident racism portrayed through the treatment of Meghan in traditional media outlets such as the Daily Mail and Daily Mirror, and have realised how prevalent racism still is, and how overtly you can be racist and get away with it. Throughout the interview, watching it yesterday, I was scrolling through Twitter looking through different hashtags, and amount of people comparing Meghan Markle to some awful things, all based on racism, and this whole like campaign to just get rid of Meghan Markle was literally just based on her race, and that's what's terrifying. And this lynching, which is the word that I've used and I've seen many people reporting on the story use, I feel is a completely appropriate term for the treatment that she's been given, was based just on her random look, if you can call it that, randomness of falling in love with a guy who had a complicated family. I know, reading tweets and on Twitter, going through hashtags, many people believe that they felt their criticisms of Meghan were not only valid but like correct and the only objective way to move forward. They believed that they were entirely rational, and trying to use the argument that Meghan was playing the race card and that racism was being used as a way to belittle their genuine criticisms of a woman who just simply exists. And ironically, they were belittling genuine concerns about how racist people were being towards the Duchess of Sussex and how openly racist they were being towards people of colour generally. Despite the fact that the racism that Meghan has experienced is awful and inexcusable, but not only by members of the public, it's by traditional newspapers very overtly and very obviously. This racism represents the struggles that people of colour face every minute of every day in the UK, and how prevalent passive racism and microaggressions are still within our society, but also the fact that people can be blatantly and overtly racist and get away with it, saying things that people in my generation are saying, things that I would get angry at my grandparents for saying. Moving on to the next kind of section, it's suicidal mentions and the discussions of this within the media, as well as the implications of a lack of complete faith in those who are struggling with their mental health. I'm going to put here a huge trigger warning for suicidal thoughts, mention of suicide, self-harm, just general discussion around mental health, etc. I won't be discussing any of these issues in any kind of detail, and obviously not in any kind of graphic detail, but I just wanted to make sure you're aware that I will be discussing this topic because Meghan mentioned it. I won't be discussing it in any more detail than she did, in that she didn't explain it in much detail at all. But if this is something that triggers you, makes you uncomfortable, or if you generally don't want to hear me discuss it, you can skip to this time and there'll be no more discussion of any of these topics after that time. Secondly, if you are struggling with the issues discussed in Meghan's interview, or for this video for that matter, please limit your exposure, turn the video off, don't watch any of the interview, and if necessary try and seek out help to try and feel a bit better about the situation. I will link some resources down below. You can use this information if you feel that it has negatively affected you and you feel like you need help. So during Meghan's section of the interview, and also referenced in the Harry's section of the interview, Meghan's mental health severely declined throughout the last 4 years as a result of the monarchy, her public lynching within the media, her lack of protection for her husband and her son. I feel so sorry for Meghan, and I'm so glad that she kind of implied that she was feeling a lot better mentally recently, and that she was able to discuss this so publicly, that this is still something in 2021 that's very taboo subject, and a lot of people within the limelight, within not only celebrity status but royal status especially, don't really discuss at all. The comparison I've been seeing being made is between Meghan Markle and Caroline Flack. Caroline Flack, if you aren't aware, she was an ITV presenter who committed suicide last year following domestic abuse allegations and a lot of negative publicity regarding her character. Even though I do not condone her behaviour, in terms of the abuse that she supposedly inflicted, I nevertheless recognise how she should not have felt the need to take her own life. And much of this was not even due to the allegations, but instead the hate that she received on social media and traditional media, not unlike the coverage we have seen of Meghan Markle. The admiration that I have for Meghan, a character who has been a victim of a public lynching, being able to openly talk about her struggles with mental health to the point of intrusive thoughts and suicidal thoughts, I'm believing that this would be a solution to allow all of the issues for Harry to go away. The admiration for her is so high to be able to discuss it. For someone who has publicly dealt with hundreds of thousands of death threats and threats to not only her but her family's safety, her son's safety, coupled with the fact that she and Harry reportedly received no support from the administration, and then publicly go on screen and admit very emotively and movingly to be struggling with mental health, is amazing. And I'm so thankful for her to be there as a voice for people who are struggling with their mental health. She is an amazing role model for young children and adults, not only for the fact that she is a woman of colour in a position envied by so many, being the first woman of colour in this family to be documented and celebrated for centuries, but also being able to discuss her mental health problems to the point of almost taking her own life is something we can admire, as not only was she able to get out of the very toxic situation for not only her and her husband and her son, it was something that is necessary to talk about and necessary for her to be able to show that no matter what situation you're in, there is an out, and that out isn't suicide. For her to be able to say that publicly after the lynching she's already received and go on and talk about how she didn't get any support from the royal family, obviously the most famous, arguably the most famous family in the world in history, and something that an attack on the royal family doesn't come easy. Above all else, Meghan is not going to hear or see the comments that you post on Facebook or Twitter, or even on Good Morning Britain, saying you don't believe that she was, and possibly still is given the current climate for her, suicidal. You can go on around preaching that we need to listen to those who are struggling once they've committed suicide, but at the same time you're calling men, women and non-binary people attention seeking, and also faking it for attention. And those people are attention seeking in that they are asking for your attention. They need your help. Every time you share a post or like a comment saying that Meghan is faking it, they take note and they feel more alone, and they won't come to you if they are struggling, and you might lose them. So be careful with your words. When someone tells you that they're suicidal, whether that's publicly or in your personal life, even if you think they are faking it, the worst case scenario for you and for them is that as a result of you caring for them, is that you gave them more care than they needed. Where if you give the narrative that you think they're faking it and you don't give them the care and the help that they need, and they're not faking it, they are genuinely asking for help, the worst case scenario is that they take their own life. You have to weigh up the fact that even if you think someone's faking it or is doing it for attention or whatever, wouldn't you rather cover your own back and make sure you can keep this person in your life, make sure that this person doesn't take their own life, just on the off chance? To wrap up this section, just fucking believe people when they say they are struggling. The lowest point of my mental health, I looked the same as the highest point of my mental health. You can't guess what's going on inside someone's head because you're not in their fucking head. But you can listen to them, you could hear them, you could help them, you could not only help that one person avoid a horrible situation, but help contribute to a more caring and careful society that is selfless and that allows a woman to marry a man that she loves without facing death threats and racism to the point of suicidal thoughts. Moving on to the third section, the insinuations of stepping away from the monarchy and one, why this shouldn't be a huge deal, and two, why this complete liberation for Meghan and Harry and their family is completely necessary. Moving away from more of the delicate subjects in Oprah's interview, and if you are coming from the trigger warning, it's all done now. I'm not going to discuss any of those issues further. I want to discuss why moving away from the monarchy is being made into a bigger deal than it is. As discussed in Oprah's interview by Meghan, they simply stepped away from being senior members of the royal family to the less involved members of the royal family, to kind of taking on a more part-time role. This is a very common process, including many of the more distant members of the royal family being given this role automatically. Harry indicated in the interview that this role as a senior member of the royal family was very restricting, and this included Meghan's reports of all of her keys, her passport, her driving licence being taken away from her, her not being able to meet up with her friends, and Harry having to deal with discussions of issues of what colour Archie will be. Despite the fact that both Meghan and Harry indicated that a lot of the perks of being within the royal family, such as money and security, was taken away just involuntarily from them prior to this move away from the monarchy. And this was following the announcement of Meghan's first pregnancy. The fact that they're stepping away from the monarchy in the way that they did is not a huge deal, and a video I'm going to recommend is by Eve Cornwell. I'll put it down there, but also here. It is something that the fact that it more affected Harry, and it must have been a bigger decision for Harry than obviously Meghan, because she indicated that she wasn't given a lot of the perks that most of the royal family are, highlights the overt and completely unjustified bias towards Meghan, and this can only really be attributed to internalised and institutional systemic racism. The other step I've put into this category is why the liberation of Harry's family is necessary. And this is regardless of who Meghan is as a person, but instead the unfortunate and again completely unjustified treatment of Harry's mother, Princess Diana. And this treatment eventually led to her death. Princess Di was a very popular figure with the public. She stood up to the royal family, she became this fashion icon with the most iconic look of the divorce dress following Prince Charles's affair with Princess Camilla. But despite the fact that she had popularity with the public, the press did not like how she stood up to the royal family, and the media carried out a very public campaign against her that can only be compared to the treatment that Meghan has experienced in the last 4 years. On August 31st, 1997, she was involved in a car crash in Paris, and this was following being harassed by paparazzi, along with 2 other deaths that occurred in that crash. And Harry, although not specifically referencing his mother's death, has repeatedly compared the treatment of both Di and Meghan to how the media has used them as a narrative to kind of drive this story that's very supportive of the royal family because of the dealings that the traditional media has with the royal family. And so this step away from being in the royal family, from being a senior member of the royal family, was very necessary for Harry's family. Harry's speaking from a specifically family standpoint, and this is not from a business standpoint. He highlights his necessity to distance himself from the media that not only contributed to his mother's constant criticism and public legacy, but also to her unfortunate death. And to have that comparison between how his mother was treated and how his wife is treated, any husband would step away from that situation, you'd hope. Finally, the abolition of the monarchy and why I'm all for it. Fuck the monarchy. I like Meghan and Harry. They seem like alright people. And the more they've stepped away from the monarchy, the more respect that I've had for them and the more I've liked them. Especially in this interview, the monarch institution has been exposed for not only its racist, toxic and unhelpful methods of dealing with mental illness that we know has actually been there for many years, but also the deep trapped issues that the members of the royal family experience, including Meghan Markle not being able to leave the house for 2 months because her public image couldn't take any more developments. When I say to people that I believe that the monarchy should be abolished, the 2 main arguments I receive are tradition and tourism. So I'm going to split them up and kind of say why they are very strong arguments for keeping the monarchy. We'll start with tradition. The tradition of the monarchy is something that does date back centuries, and it's something that the UK is known for. But as of 2021, the monarchy has very little power compared to what it once did. The monarchy's role in legislation is given all of her powers, all of the Queen's powers has been given to the Prime Minister and his cabinet in the form of royal prerogative powers. The power that the Queen and the monarchy as a whole really have are, one, restricted by conventions, in that yes, the Queen could dissolve Parliament, but she wouldn't, and rubber stamping exercises of she signs off on every piece of legislation. She doesn't. Like, the Queen isn't there like, yep, I agree with all this, reading 12-page documents. She doesn't do that, and she wouldn't say no to a piece of legislation. She could, but she wouldn't. And this rubber stamping exercise has only been something that we've kept as a means of tradition. The tradition is something that the public care for less and less, especially considering the reduction in power. And getting rid of the monarchy does not diminish the past tradition that the UK is known for, and it doesn't erase history. It instead just allows for a republican state to operate more democratically, whilst also preserving the history that's led us to the point that we are at now. Secondly, tourism. This is the main one I always get when I say to people I don't believe in the monarchy, and I don't think it's that strong of an argument. First off, I agree that people like the royal family. People will come to England because they know we have a royal family. As Meghan pointed out in her interview, many Americans especially, let's go for the generalised Western people that care, they don't really know much about monarchy, they don't know much about our history, and they don't meet the Queen. They don't meet Prince Harry and Prince William. Often tourism is directed towards kind of the places you can visit. So Buckingham Palace, oh, you can't go inside? Could make it into a tourist attraction. That'd make fucking money, wouldn't it? Therefore, saying the royal family brings a lot of money to the UK in terms of tourism, I don't think that the royal family, as a family, bring that much tourism to the UK. Buckingham Palace, yes, just as much as Parliament does, which Parliament's necessary. Parliament has a job. Parliament, although it has its flaws, isn't taking money from taxpayers simply to fund a lifestyle that's just been given to you because of your birthright. And so if we turn Buckingham Palace into a tourist destination, that would be popular because people would still see the soldiers in the black hats, people would still be able to visit Buckingham Palace, they'd be able to go into Buckingham Palace, which is probably more of an interesting experience than they were to see the Queen. People go to Auschwitz because it's interesting, not because they want to see that piece of history be alive. They don't want to see that happening, but we can still appreciate the history, we can still visit somewhere to appreciate the history. Also, people visit places like France and the US despite the fact that they don't have a monarchy anymore. It's not that no one would come to us anymore, we have other things to offer. The point I've written here as my final point is, people don't only come to the UK for the royal family, they also come for Parliament, London Bridge, the Wheel, and have you heard? Other places in the UK? Try going to Scotland, try going to Wales. What? Come to Manchester, we're great. Don't have a queen, so move Andy Bird. The point is, fuck the monarchy. Turn it into a tourist attraction if you're so bothered about tourism. And that's all from me today. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you feel like you've either learnt something, which would be nice, or you feel like your beliefs have just been reaffirmed. Maybe you want to come overthrow the monarchy with me. Let's do it. Thank you for watching. I will see you again soon.